You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, loyal subjects of the Terran Empire, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Regent Kelvin, Manchester's master and lord of the Terran Manor. And with me today, I'm joined with Empress Amy, Queen of the Gays, retirer of education and ruler of Vegas. And finally, Lord Mark White, the overlord of Boston, director supreme of Z-list movies, and master of all things green. Long live the Empire!
Long live
the Empire!
How we doing?
Oh my gosh, what a great intro, Kelvin. I am doing great, being Queen of the Gays and retirer of education.
How's things with you, Mark?
Oh, when I'm done with both of you, there'll be so much blood that it will rain from the sky.
Love it. Just the three of us this week. We've thrown Christos into the agonizer.
Yes.
He's in the booth.
He needed some time to think.
Absolutely. Big week for us this week. Before, as our listeners may have guessed, we're in the Terran Empire this week. But before we join our matter at hand, let's have a look at... We don't have these things in the Terran Empire, but in the Prime Universe, there's something known as an escape pod.
This is the bridge. All hands to emergency escape pods.
Escape pod. In this segment, we have a brief discussion of the latest episode of Star Trek that's dropped. In this case, it's Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 1, titled The Broken Circle. Now, if you haven't watched that episode, technically it dropped last week, so it's on you. Just saying, we're dropping this on the day where episode 2 is coming out, so you should have seen episode 1. But if not, you can skip ahead a few minutes because there'll be spoilers on that first episode. So, Kelvin, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
Well, for a start, I'm just so glad it's back. I remember when Picard finished and we were saying, oh my God, we've got a couple of months to wait. And some people wanted the rest. I just wanted to go straight into Strange New Worlds. I think I've appreciated the time off, but it's made me realize and appreciate a new episode of Star Trek all the more. So I am very grateful it was back. I think it was a strong story to start with. But what I really appreciated about the episode was the brave decision to not feature Pike and Una and it be about the ensemble. Obviously, it was very Spock heavy, but it was good to have the other characters. And again, doing what Strange New Worlds has done so well, develop those characters and let us have them. So that was my favorite observation about the episode. What about you, Amy?
Wow. I agree with you in that having that time to breathe and just really appreciate and have the time to talk about Picard season 3, because we needed that. Like I needed that. So this space really gave each show their own time and I needed it. And yeah, then I get the build up for Strange New Worlds. My first watch was, but I have watched it twice since then and absolutely am in love with Ethan Peck. He's my new favorite. He was not my favorite Spock, but after this episode, he has moved up and has bumped Leonard Nimoy down.
Wow.
I know.
What
Zachary Quinto's still my favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did Spock do this week to earn your favor?
You know, I realized that Ethan Peck's Spock is going to be focused more on his humanity and more of his mother's side. Like we're getting now the connection to Carol Kane, who plays Pila, who came out and to Amanda Grayson. So there's that connection where we're getting Amanda's side, which is more the human side the more emotional side, the more feminine side, I guess you would, because every previous Spock has always been father side, Vulcan side, logic side. So we're seeing, I feel, this humanity, this softer, this more feminine side of Spock, and I'm completely on board with it and love that we get to see that in this one character, because we have different sides, you know. We have our parent side, our dad side, our mother side. We have our feminine side, our masculine side. So to explore that in one character, and one character that has covered every series, basically, like, I'm really on board for it.
Fabulous. How exciting. Mark, we know you love Strange New Worlds. How did it leave you?
Left me quivering. No, I was like everybody else. I'm like, why aren't they just doing it right after Picard? But then I see why. Now I get it, because it's very different tones. And they're two different things. Star Trek Picard, I mean, they were, 110% every single episode, because they were on a mission. They were on a mission that was nearly 40 years old, of completing all of these story arcs in one season of 10 episodes. And they had to accomplish this thing. And it was essentially really a 10-hour movie. That is what season 3 of Picard was. And it was heavy, but there were moments of levity or whatever. But it was not an episodic Star Trek of old. This was a 10-hour marathon, and they were all running to the finish. And then you get to Strange New Worlds, and it's definitely a reset, because this is episodic, happy-go-lucky, low-stakes, fun Trek, which I feel like is the best. Trek's at its best when it's that. Amy and I gush all the time about Joe Menosky episodes, because they're just silly little Star Trek episodes, like Masks and stuff. It's like, you put it on for fun. You don't want to deal with heavy things. Life is heavy enough. So you put on some Star Trek, have a little fun, get a message out of it that means something. And, here we have another great example of that, where you have, the stakes were reasonable. You didn't have Pike or Una in it, but if you did, the focus wouldn't have been on all the rest of the crew. It would have just been on Pike and Una. And do you want to launch season 2 with only focusing on 2 of the main cast members? Because you only got 10 episodes. So I feel like it was a really good choice that they did, a very bold choice. And also, I mentioned it on a couple other podcasts, but having it done this way means that it's not part 2. This is not a part 2 episode of the finale at all. This is another episode by itself, right? And do you need to have seen the previous episode to get it? No, they fill you in briefly at the beginning and you move on. That's what's great about this, because I've mentioned before, 3, 4, 5 years from now, I come home from work, it's a long day. I just want to throw on some Star Trek, something maybe action adventure-y. I'll throw on this episode and I'll be entertained, and I won't need to watch the episode before. I probably won't need to watch the episode after. I'll be able to watch just this episode. And and for that, I love it. Thank you for making this episode.
I think that's really funny. You should just reference that, and then kind of flipping it on its head to the exercise we've had to do this week. 2 years later, here we are rewatching an episode for today's podcast, and I thought, where were we up to at this point? Oh, Saru's captain, right? Okay, not to give too much away, but it's the exact opposite of what you've just said, Mark, and I really appreciate that. And something you will appreciate, speaking of the reset. Oh my God, and Benga was so good in this episode. Thank God they're going with a brand new direction and a brand new storyline for him this season. Now all the Rakaya stuff is brought to its end. I'm really excited to see what we get with the Doctor this season.
His daughter was all that he had left of that family unit. I'm guessing that his wife was killed by Klingons during the Klingon War. And then his daughter got sick, and he's like, this is all I have left of my precious family. And I think that's another reason why she was in the transporter. I've always defended that anyway.
You know, it reminded me sort of those scenes where Chapel was like, the war is over. You know, we're at a different place now. It took me back to TNG, like Cardassians with Miles O'Brien, you know, not getting over what the Cardassian had done because he had served in that war. And, you know, it just was very reminiscent. And I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a fun thing to see. Well, not fun, but an interesting and complex issue to develop with M'Benga.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a lot of the after effects of the Klingon War this season. Because if you think the Discovery cast that sat out the war on the Enterprise, which is a story told in one of the Discovery novels, they weren't the same cast that we have now. It was Pike, Spock, and Una, but people like Ortega, M'Benga, Chapel, they weren't in that book. They hadn't signed on to the Enterprise yet. So they served in the war.
Yeah.
And we're going to now hear those stories of PTSD and lots of other stuff. So yeah, what a great setup for the
Kelvin,
rest of the cast.
You just filled something in for me, because I was wondering what happened to, was it Boyce? What was the captain during the cage, or the doctor during the cage?
Yeah.
So he must have sat out the war on Enterprise and then afterwards left and got replaced by M'Benga. Huh.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. Any more?
Can we just talk about Jess Bush and her amazing chemistry with every single person that she is with? Like, I'm loving her so much. And like the way that she's interacting with M'Benga and Spock, like, it's real, it's authentic. I'm 100% on board with seeing more of Nurse Chapel.
Amen to that.
I appreciated so much that Jess Bush nailed her American accent in episode 1 of season 2, because that was a sticking point for me. If you remember, one of the few downs I gave, and I love Jess Bush, and I think she's the perfect Nurse Chapel. I've always thought so, but when her Australian comes out, and it did a few times in season 1, it really took me out of the episode. So I was listening intently to this episode, and she stayed with her American accent, and I was like, okay, good, great, she's got it.
I don't think I noticed any of the Aussie coming out of her in season 1. I'm gonna have to do another rewatch now, Mark.
That's a deep nitpick, and I love a show if that's my nitpick.
It's just a fabulous ensemble of amazing actors, and anytime I talk about Strange New Worlds, I talk about all of the actors, how great they are.
So I wanted to ask, we got the catchphrase thing now going with this new series, right? So how was it received for you?
I just think it's become this bit of a thing that we don't need. I'm perfectly happy with engage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to a hit it. I think Let's Fly is a bit forced. And for them to now say, oh, this is a thing, like they did with Seven, like they've done with Spock, I don't think we need it. Let's stick with the classic, engage.
Because engage means like engage the warp engines.
Exactly. And what are we going to do if it leaks into the transporter room? And what are you going to say instead of energize? Beam me.
Yeah, they're going to run out of catchphrases pretty fast. It's just, they just need to drop that, please, for the love of God.
I mean, we all know Picard did it best. Engage, make it so. What more do you need?
Absolutely. And even Cisco stuck with it. So it must
And
be.
Janeway.
Yeah. They didn't have a thing. It was just,
We don't need a thing.
Eye roll.
I mean, I felt they did it perfect with Seven. to not say it. And then they should have just dropped it. This one was just one too many. You know?
Maybe they were developed in parallel and nobody spoke to each other. So, you know, it was rather than it being a multi-series plot point that crosses over, maybe it was a fluke.
Right.
Maybe Picard and Strange New Worlds, because this was written and filmed so long ago, season 2, episode 1. Maybe they just didn't chat about it. Right. Well, shall we engage onto back to the Prime universe?
Make it
to the Terran Empire in the Mirror universe, and talk about our episode this week. We're going into our Mirror Reflections series, and we're on part 4, and we're going to look at the 2-part episode, Discovery, Terra Firma. Now, just realized we haven't done a little synopsis in the overview. Does anyone feel brave and want to do a very quick overview? Go on, Mark.
Oh, I got it. So at the start of the episode, you got Saru and Stamets and them. They're all trying to figure out, I guess this is like the cause of the burn thing, and they're working was that ever... Is that the engine room? I don't know if they're in engineering or not.
The spore room.
The spore drive. They're always in the spore drive. We've never even seen engineering or discovery. Another point. Anyway, so they're in there doing that, and we find out that our beloved Terran Empress, Philippa Georgiou, she is she's going to be ripped apart by Adam because the Terran Empire and the Prime universe, they've drifted apart for hundreds of years, and so Kovich is there, and he sort of explains why this is happening, and then he says there's nothing we could do, like we should just put her out of her misery, and then who was it?
Zora.
Yeah, but was it Dr. Culber? Yeah, Dr. Culber asked the computer to use the information pre-burn that they had with the new information, and have the computer sort of add the two and figure out if there was a solution. And they figured out that there was a solution, and it was on this planet. And so we have Emperor Georgiou. She goes with Michael Burnham, and they go onto this planet, and well, there is Carl there, who, spoiler alert, ends up being the Guardian of Forever. And he sends Emperor Georgiou through the portal to be weighed. And when she goes out the other side, it is the Terran universe, and it is her time where she came from. And and so she spends the episode there sort of trying to right wrongs and do things differently, because she has grown a lot and learned a lot in the Prime universe. And in the end, she ends up dying, Michael ends up dying, and she's like, well, I tried my best, but I still wasn't able to change anything. And Carl lets her know that the point was that she had tried, and she had proven that she had learned and proven that she had grown, and was given this second chance to be able to redeem herself. And she says bye to Michael and goes through the portal to who knows where. We'll talk about that later. And then she goes back to the ship and lets everybody know that she's gone. And they do have a nice little remembrance ceremony for her. And the whole crew's there, and they're all telling memories and whatnot. And I thought that was a really cool, sort of touching way to say goodbye to the character who's been there since the first, shot of the first episode. So, yeah, it was great that they did that.
That was very thorough, Mark. I'm impressed.
That was a scene-by-scene breakdown.
It was.
I hadn't had any of Raffi's, what is it, the snakeweed or whatever.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So let's explore some of those aspects, particularly of Georgiou, that we see in this episode. So we've seen a lot from Georgiou doing this throughout, but certainly it comes to a head in this episode, this lashing out when scared. A classic defense mechanism. So sticking with that subject, do any of us have a defense mechanism? Do you have one? I mean, while you're just thinking of that, I do use humor as a defense mechanism. Always have. Lighten the mood, lighten the situation. If it's getting too heavy, if it's getting too personal, if it's going in a way I don't want it to, make a joke. As a young person at school, that made me be the funny one, because I was never the sporty one. I was never the popular one. I was never the attractive one. So I got to be the
that's
funny
not
one.
true.
Oh, no, it was then. It's not now. And then in the workplace, it's allowed me to kind of be that fun boss, that fun leader that people warm to more, rather than kind of a little bit stuffy, a little bit boring. So it has followed me through life, using humor to deflect or de-escalate a serious situation. How about you? Have you delve deep into your own psyches? What do you do?
Wow. Okay. I think I have a couple as I'm thinking about my life. The one that is sort of my go-to, I'm just going to be the ostrich. I'm just going to put my head in the sand and sort of let everything go over, and I'll pop my head up. Is it safe to come out? Okay, yeah, I can come out. Because I don't like dealing with conflict, and I know that's not the best way. And so then when I do get riled up, one of my friends just recently called me out. It's like, you turn into a lioness. And I'm like, yeah, when I'm passionate and when I know I'm right and when I've logically thought that. So I sort of go to logic when I'm on the offense, like when I'm lashing out. I will just use my logic. And of course, it's flawed because I'm usually in the wrong. And so it takes someone pointing out my illogical assumptions for me to change and to calm down and to stop being on the offense. So I think I employ those two defense mechanisms.
Fascinating. Mark, what do you got?
Oh, I could relate to you so much, Calvin. And I think that's, I think a lot of the gay experience, I think that's one thing that can connect a lot of the community, is that we have a tendency to, go and be the comedians of the group in those circumstances, to sort of deflect when things are a little bit heavy or a little bit serious. And so I could see myself relating in that regard to maybe scary situations. Now, as far as heavy situations, that's a different sort of deflection. Like if life is coming at you with a bunch of not necessarily scary, but maybe heavy things, then I would turn into more like Amy and be the ostrich and put my head down and be like, okay, I just need to focus on breathing right now and nothing else. And when I can focus on all of that, storm that's happening around me, I will pick my head up out of the sand. But so yeah, I think it just depends on the nature of what's happening, whether it is something that's scary, whether it's something that is sad or heavy. There's different ways to cope, and that I see myself in both of your stories.
So all of those things there, and thank you for sharing, are things that we, to be able to reflect on those and know that about yourself is very emotionally intelligent, just to big us all up a little bit. But looking at Georgiou, her arc throughout the 2.5 seasons were really this mirror universe Terran Empress learning to become a new person or a different person in this different universe. So what do we think about that? What do you think, Amy?
I saw this arc in these 2 episodes, and you're right. From the time that she was brought from season 1, right, to the Prime, and so she literally was taken out of her comfort zone. I think that's the first step in learning to be a different person, where you are brought out of your comfort zone. She's now in the Prime universe. She now has to live among these weak people who she obviously is stronger, more powerful, more strategic. Like she thinks that she's better than everyone else because she thinks she has this strength. And it's so interesting when she's fighting with Burnham in their gymnasium, whatever. And Burnham's like, that's the weak way. That's the easy way out. And you should be strong and learn to live this new way, and sort of pushes her to that. And so I think living in this environment has thoroughly changed her, has truly changed her. And I feel like it's at that point where she's like, oh, I can live a different way and still be powerful, but still have this compassion, that her body starts freaking out and we see her phasing. And I love the effects on that. And it's painful. And I was like, oh my gosh, when we learn to be a different person, we go through that pain as well. So it's like connecting all of this together in teaching us viewers how to be a different person.
I really like the kind of gravitas of this episode of Georgiou's been in the Prime universe, longing to get back to the Mirror universe, and it's not until she gets there, and that is the point, the eureka moment that has made her appreciate that she has changed. And yes, she doesn't quite fit in either, but it's almost a bit like the show Schitt's Creek, of this kind of you're a fish out of water, you disapprove of everyone around you, you're better, but actually over time, given the chance to go back to your old life, you no longer fit there. So the fact that they threw her back to the Mirror universe and that made her answer all these lessons, I just think it was a great life lesson, and Star Trek at its best, that kind of the mirror, no pun intended, to real life.
And we had, I mean, all of us had mentioned sort of, I guess, reasonably healthy ways to deal with, being out of our comfort zone. But the way that Georgiou responded is very human. And it is a way that a lot of people deal with it, whether they are, using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism, or lashing out in anger. But there are definitely plenty of destructive ways that could really be harmful to, friends and family members. That, she grew up in the Mirror universe where if you don't respond in an angry, aggressive, like alpha way, you could get killed. So you have to sort of learn to fight all of the time and react aggressively all of the time. And, that is years of wiring that over the last few seasons of Discovery, she has had to do a lot of work to unwire. But it does go to show a lot of the strength of character of her, that she was able to do that. And I think it's true for most humans as well. And it is a choice. And I think they said it in a Discovery episode, that, in order to, go a different direction, you just have to, start walking that road. And she has chosen to do that. And, I've known people in my life too that have decided, hey, the direction I was going in was not healthy for anybody, and I'm going to go this other road. And it's very hard to do. And I think we have to celebrate the people that put in the work, and maybe they stumble along the way, but don't give up on them if you see that they are trying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That totally leads me to my next point of like, when have we had to learn about humanity? And it was so interesting as I was seeing Georgiou in this, she's phasing. And again, love the special effects. It's like a plane that's removing her molecules. It's pretty cool. It's mathematically interesting. That's another subject. But what I see, like, okay, we all know these older white men who are misogynistic, homophobic, and now they're living in 2023, and that's just not acceptable anymore. But they're stuck in the past. This is how they grew up. This is their world. And so when I see these older white men to try and accept that women are in power, like, I see them phasing in and out, and I do recognize their progress. And there are some who just, nope, I'm not going to change. You're wrong. I'm right, because this is how it's all been. But those who are changing, I see the struggle where they'll say something, i.e. my father, and I will correct him, say, no, Dad, this really is how it is. And he listens. And when he's processing, I see him like phasing like Georgiou, because he's trying to change and better himself. And so, yes, I do applaud those who are going through the struggle and trying to learn to live in this new progressive world.
What a lovely little thing to say on Father's Day as well, Amy. That's really sweet.
Oh my gosh, yes. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I
Aw.
appreciate your struggle.
Can I tell you a very, very quick story of something that happened to me at work this week? Speaking of kind of men phasing. So I was doing a safety audit for a hotel. I was in the kitchen with the head chef. He was a really nice guy. We finished the audit of the department. I was just wrapping up, ready to move on to the next. And he turned around just very candidly and said, "Oh, well, that was really painless. I guess I can put the lube away." And I just laughed and kind of walked away and thought, and it was like the cogs were going round in my mind, connecting the dots to what he meant by that. Basically, he just said, "Oh, like was expecting to be shafted, for want of a better term, and this be a painful process." And it wasn't. So clearly a homophobic slur. To me, whether he knew I was gay or not, I obviously don't wear a badge, but he's not blind and deaf. I just couldn't believe it. But I was more disappointed that it put me in a position where normally outside of work, I would have done what you've just done, Amy, and said, no, that's actually really offensive. Do you know what that means, what you've just said, and how that makes me feel as a gay man? But because I was in customer service mode, and this particular hotel failed their audit, I didn't want any allegations to be made about my integrity, saying,
Right.
"Oh, they've pissed you off, so you failed their audit." So I kept quiet, and it bothered me all day that I didn't call this guy out on it, who, as I've said, was a nice guy. I don't believe he was being particularly malicious. He's just a bit of a dinosaur.
Yeah, just repeating a phrase that meant something but
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah.
I just want to say that probably, as we discussed at the beginning of Kelvin, you and I, using humor to diffuse a situation in our lives that are stressful. I'm guessing that's what the attempt was being made by that chef to do, and thought you would be receptive to it because he was picking up on maybe a vibe, and thought that it would be appropriate. Not to say that it was, which it obviously was not in the work environment, but I'm guessing that's where he was at. He was really nervous and scared about the audit, and sort of in that situation let out in his mind a joke that he thought might have get well received because of the audience he's saying it to, but just knowing, I guess, the time and the place, and also he doesn't know you, so it was also odd.
Yeah, I think that's how I need to make peace with the situation, that he just tried to use humor that was not well received. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to kind of vent my weekly workplace frustration there. Okay, so This episode did touch upon, with the Georgiou phasing aspect and the ticking timer on her wrist on the little flashing indicator, that time was running out, and therefore a similarity with someone with a known terminal illness, which kind of brings us on to the quite heavy topic, but topic definitely worth discussion, of dying with dignity or assisted suicide. So, yeah, what do we think about that particular plot point in this episode? What are your thoughts, Mark?
This is one of the things I applaud Star Trek for, that they continue to do, is like they talk about these very real subjects that, sadly many of us have to think about at some point or other in our lives, but through the lens of sci-fi, right? Where you have this character that maybe she doesn't have, terminal cancer or something, but she is phasing in and out of, time and space. And having the crew all sort of come to terms with that in their own way, and Georgiou coming to terms with it. And that's what I noticed most of all, was watching her process it, think about what she wanted to do. And what she wanted to do is just essentially like peace out, pull the plug. She wanted to be, mercy killed, essentially. And then, of course, Michael Burnham, who needs to save everyone and everything all at once, she ended up, well, actually, was it Michael, or it was Dr. Culber actually found the solution, but Michael did encourage her to take that solution to go down to the planet and meet whatever destiny was there for her, to give her another shot. And I think that it's important to be there for friends and family members to process these things with, and we can't answer for them, right? Like, what is the best course of action? They have to decide. Like, Michael couldn't force the Emperor down onto the planet to do this. It was her choice, but she could do her best to explain why this other option might be worth fighting for. And I think that, if we are good friends and family members to people going through things that are heavy like this, the best thing we can do is maybe share what we think should happen, but also be open to understanding where somebody else is coming from, because that is the key, because we can't preach at people. We're not in their shoes. We're not going through what they're going through. We have to be open enough to sort of put ourselves in their shoes, understanding what they're going through, and be a sounding board and listen. I think it's really important for all of us to listen to people that are going through those heavy situations, and be there and sit with them, because so many other people are going to be like giving them anecdotes. Well, tomorrow's going to be a brighter day and you never know, and blah, blah, blah. But no. To sit and actually listen and process, because if you show willingness to do that, then maybe that person will be open enough to go along with your suggestion, because you haven't just given them a sort of cookie cutter answer. You've processed and listened to what they had to say as well.
Well, and I think that's a really good point that Georgiou actually sees, like, the easy way out, or is it harder to deal with your consequences and to live your life? Like, that's, because she kept saying, oh, I need to be honorable and I need to have a warrior's death. Well, being dead doesn't get you what you say that you want. And here, Philippa wanted to be emperor, right? And she experiences kindness and compassion through Michael and through Tilly, when Tilly goes to sit down, share a meal with her and gets her meal thrown at her. But I think that's a turning point, also with Georgiou. And when Burnham's like, it's more difficult to live this life. And then when Georgiou goes back to the mirror universe, that's like you said, Kelvin, she sees it, she recognizes it. And I think she learns the long game. If I want to be emperor, I should have subjects. I should have people that I am ruling over. And if I go and kill everyone, and she's telling this to Mirror Michael, then I'm not really a ruler. I've just gone and killed everyone. So who am I ruling? We need to gather subjects. We need to build an empire. And I think it's that short-sightedness versus the long game that Georgiou realizes, oh, I don't want to have this honorable death. I do want to have this empire.
Yeah, the way I looked at this kind of subject was the kind of the in-your-face Georgiou's phasing, and she's dying, you know. And when you talk about assisted suicide and dying with dignity, you know, there's almost a kind of a quantification of what is suffering. Now, in this episode, we were very lucky that we knew there was a solution. It's down on the planet. That's the right and the moral and the Starfleet thing to do. But it just got me thinking about the kind of that subject of, you know, Burnham is, for want of a better thing, the family member for Georgiou here. And in a normal situation in real life, the family member who doesn't want the suffering person to die, wants to extend their life, wants to tell them tomorrow is a new day, as you said, Mark. A lot of that comes through fear and selfishness, that they're not ready to cope with the loss, as opposed to the end of suffering. So I don't actually think that this episode did a fabulous job of exploring Georgiou's right to end the suffering and die with dignity. It just did a better job of the persuasion of try another way, because the solution could be around the corner. So it was more the reflection on life and what life is, in terms of what it can be, when the Guardian of Forever actually cured her of this phasing by giving her another chance. I don't think it really explored traditional dying with dignity.
You know, you bring up a good point, and it reminds me of my mother's choice, who recently passed. And what was it? 2 years ago, she had leukemia. 4 years ago was diagnosed. 2 years of chemo, and she was doing good. And then the leukemia came back, and she tried to do blood infusions, and she's like, I am not going to do chemo again. The quality of life is not good. And I, as her daughter, wanted, no, you can't do this. And you're right, I was being selfish. I didn't want to lose my mom, but it was her choice. And how she ended her life by not agreeing to chemo basically was her, not, I guess not assisted suicide, but her dying with dignity. And I'm actually grateful I had that time to say my goodbyes. But I couldn't find another way out. There was no other solution. Like, our medical technology has not cured leukemia. So I think in this episode with Georgiou, had there not been a solution, then she probably would have died in battle.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the only way, and it is her choice. But if there is a solution, then yeah, let's try everything there is. So maybe that's how Discovery is coming at this assisted suicide, dying with dignity.
Discovery has gone to this topic a couple of times, because they also talked about it with Saru, and Saru is going through his change, and they thought that he was going to die, and Michael got the knife, and she was there to cut off his ganglia, which essentially would have supposedly killed him, and she was willing at that point to step up and help him die. In that occasion, because there didn't seem to be any other options. But in this scenario with Georgiou, there's another option.
Yeah. And it goes to show as well in Star Trek that assisted dying is the norm in a lot of other cultures. You had Worf with his brother Kern in DS9 when he wanted a dishonorable death. You had Worf himself in Ethics.
Yeah.
And then in The Quickening, you had the Doctor on the planet whose sole job was to go and kill people who've got to a certain state with the quickening virus, to Bashir's disgust that he could be called he was just Dr. Death. He just killed them. So Star Trek does do this subject a lot, and it kind of it's very topical in the news here in the UK, because in Switzerland, in Europe, it is legal for assisted suicide, and they have a clinic called Dignitas. And there's about 350 people in the UK who've gone to Switzerland to Dignitas to end their life. And, you know, the legal side of things are, can charges be brought against the family member who have facilitated this journey? If you drove them there, if you bought the plane tickets, what part did you play? And imagine the agony of the family member going through that in general, but then having the legal side thrown on too, making you an accessory to murder. So it is such a hot topic. It really is. But I mean, just to put my personal view out there, I do believe it's the individual's choice of, do you want quality of life or do you want quantity of life? And for a lot of people, quality is more important to go out on a high. Right.
Agreed. I know.
I think that's pretty heavy, isn't it? It's a hard subject because we've all got family. We all think of these things. You think about yourself, what you do in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of return to Georgiou as a person, as a trajectory of her own life, and that kind of being on Discovery changed her fundamentally. She no longer works in the mirror universe when she went back. So I think, as it says here in our notes, we called it kind of like a timeline shift, or where a point, you know, a fork in the road. Do you turn left? Do you turn right? Where your timeline changes. It's almost like a parallels moment in DS9, in TNG, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, all of those different quantum realities that life could take us. So again, reflecting on our own lives, if it's not too self-indulgent, when's a time that you hit a fork in the road in your timeline split? Amy, is there anything you want to bring up?
You know, as I've lived my 50 years this year, I really thought that I had a time splitting decision. But now that I've come around, it's now so inconsequential. So I think splits can split permanently, but then can also rejoin. So my example is like when I got married at age stupidly young 20. And so after, just 1.5 years. Stupid mistake. Don't get married so young. And then I got divorced. So I was divorced at age 22. In my culture, this is just no. You get married forever, and you start your family. And so it was I was this anomaly at age 22. Here I am divorced. And then on all the stupid government or applications, are you married? Are you single? Are you divorced? I'm like, no, it's none of your business. Why does it matter that I'm divorced? And now at this age, I don't even put that I'm divorced. I just put single, because that's all you need to know, if you need to know anything at all. So it was a big divergent, but then it's come back and now it's inconsequential. So I find that interesting. However, the time when I left the church, that is a true timeline split. And if I were to go back, I would not be fitting into that universe. This is my new path that is irreparable and continues to diverge and get further and further away from F. At that point, I stayed in the church. Yeah, those timelines are separating, getting further distance, exactly as was told in this episode.
Yeah, and you're walking your path, not somebody else's, or
Yes.
somebody else's expected path of you.
Yes. Yeah.
Mark?
Well, what came to mind when I saw this question? So I had been sort of, when I was in high school, struggling with my sexuality and with, religion, obviously. And I was raised very strict Catholic. And I had because of that, a lot of mental health issues that hadn't been unpacked or dealt with through my, teens and early 20s. And I found myself in a place where, I was thinking about taking my own life on a pretty regular basis. And I was very medicated and started going to therapy. And when I was in therapy, in the lobby waiting to see my therapist, I met a gentleman about the same age as me. And we ended up bonding and becoming very close. And he was somebody else that was dealing with a lot of trauma, also dealing with his sexuality. He was more on the heterosexual side, but also questioning. And so we became an item for a number of years, off and on, because he would leave me and date a woman and then come back and we'd be together again. And then he'd leave me and for another lady. And we went back and forth on this for a number of years. That was just the yin and yang of our relationship. But every time it hurt real bad, because not only were we a couple, but he was my best friend and also understood me in a way that few people I've ever met in my life have. And for the most part, aside from occasionally leaving me and dating a woman for like 3 or 4 months, we had a pretty good relationship and we were very supportive of each other and loved each other quite a bit. But it got to a point where his struggles, mental health wise, ended up turning to alcohol. And alcohol plus like antipsychotic medication don't really go well together. There was an episode that had happened, and he had become physically violent towards me. And I ended up leaving. And it was a very tough decision because, I've never met anybody in my life that understood me in a way that he did, that I felt loved me for who I was, really, genuinely, truly for who I was before him. And so to say goodbye to that relationship was probably the hardest thing that I ever did. But I knew that if I stayed, I wouldn't come out of it, he was in a very dark place and I just couldn't be there with him. And so that leaving that very toxic relationship was hard for me because there was love there on both ends. And I sold a whole bunch of my stuff, got rid of like everything. And I bought a plane ticket and it was one way to Miami Beach, Florida. I had never left Maine. And I just got on a plane, didn't know anybody, didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live. I stayed at a youth hostel and I escaped to the other side of the country. And I started a journey of really understanding myself. And I traveled for about 5 years or so, moving every 6 months to a different spot around the country. And I would stay there until I'd learned something or got something out of it. And then I would go on to the next place. And so for me, when I think about, that question that you're asking, that life-changing decision, all I can think about is that moment when I just decided to leave.
Wow.
Yeah, Mark, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really personal.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of not to be flippant and talk Star Trek about that, kind of what you said about you didn't want to leave and, you took that really brave decision. The person you are here and now, if you think back and that was a time with someone who really understood you and your best friend, you could go back to that time, you've changed, your life is completely different now. What would that be like to kind of, there is no picking up where you left off. And I think that's such a theme for what we're all talking about here, that people, we change and we grow. So yeah,
it's an interesting thought about if I were to go back and who I am in the moment now, to go back to that scenario, because I remember giving so many chances and exhausting all possibilities.
Yeah.
Because I loved him so much, but I couldn't. And I've thought about that moment, and I've thought about him like so often, in my life since. And I feel good now knowing that I tried everything. But I don't think I would have changed anything, because I don't think I'd be the person I am now had I not tried and exhausted all avenues and gotten to the point of having to walk away. Because had I not, I would have been second guessing myself. Well, maybe I could have done more. At this stage of my life, I know that I couldn't have. I did everything.
So no regrets, and that's the best way to look at it. Well done. Oh, thank you again, Mark. So bringing certainly this episode to a close, we had Georgiou.
Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Well, Kelvin, would you like to share with us a moment where your timeline has split?
Oh, I appreciate I didn't actually do myself, though. I'm so sorry. Mine is it's a little lighter than some of the stories that you've said. Again, Mark, I didn't realize you were raised Catholic. I think all of us have had the religion card dealt to us,
Strongly.
and it really messes you up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was
Kelvin.
also raised very, very Catholic.
Bless your heart.
Thank you, my love. Yeah, I'm from a very conservative, religious, small town. Everybody's white, everybody's straight, and I was a very, very quiet, introverted child with the express intention of that to be under the radar and not stand out and draw attention to myself. And with the sole purpose in life was to kind of get away from that environment, to establish myself somewhere else in another city, and to start. So my kind of fork in the road was aged 18, leaving home to attend university, to live my true, authentic life. I'd just come out. I started making relationships and friends with other gay people who I'd never met before. And yeah, it was almost like my life began aged 18. My life before that was just very unhappy, very quiet, not a particularly close relationship with my family, just knowing I didn't fit in, with the kind of happy ending of now moving to an environment where there are other people like you, and the way you are is celebrated, not tolerated. And yeah, so that was my kind of happy path of leaving behind the drama. And again, with this kind of concept of going back, I cannot visit my parents for any prolonged period of time. And I know a lot of people have that of like, living under your mother's rule, or you're in your mum and dad's house. But for me, I revert to that teenager again, who doesn't feel empowered to speak, who isn't allowed to have an opinion, doesn't kind of challenge anything, and just sits there kind of playing with their phone, reading a book. So it's not good for me now to go back. And I probably go and see my parents on like Christmas Day for a few hours, or around that time. My dad's birthday is like the 2nd of January, so that tends to be the day I go. And I feel a bit cruel saying things like that on Father's Day, because they are good parents. They, I love my mum and dad. They're at arm's length, and that's fine.
Yes, I guess I don't have to. I could make the choice not to. But yeah, when I go back to family engagements, it's like Philippa going back to the mirror universe and saying, what in the heck is going on? Can we just have a little bit more compassion? Can we see the long game of why we are all together? Because we are a family. And yes, I am going to respect your wishes. And you want to say a prayer over the food? Fine. I'm not going to engage. I don't believe it. So you do your thing. And so there are times where I feel like shields up, like you do your little church thing. I'm in the room, but I am protected from all of this falsehood that I believe religion to be. But still trying to engage. And when those timelines come back together where I have to be with my family, then what are those defenses I have to deal with? And I am choosing to continue to have these relationships, but it has been difficult to learn how to act and still be my authentic self, but yet still respect the years and knowledge and love that they gave me growing up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So a brighter, more positive future, maybe. We saw Georgiou go through the Guardian of Forever. We didn't really hear much indications of where that might be, other than a time when both universes weren't as separate, so she would be safe. That's in effect what saves her. But now we know this is Georgiou being deposited somewhere so we can get the Section 31 movie that she is part of. So it just got me thinking very quickly, if we want to share our thoughts of where do we want her to emerge from the Guardian of Forever? What would be a good premise for Section 31 for you? What do you want, Mark?
I thought it would be kind of cool. I've had this sort of thought in the back of my head for a while that she would end up in a lesser shown time for Star Trek. So maybe around the Enterprise C, and her coming back maybe in the middle of that battle. Was it with the Romulans? Yeah. Around that time, being deposited maybe on the Enterprise C during that battle, maybe, whatever. I don't know. But around that time, I think it would be juicy because it hasn't really been explored too much. So that would be cool to see.
That would. That's a good time because we already know, like, we've seen the C-ish, like, in a different universe. So that would totally make sense. And I love that. Well, I was thinking because it's before the Mirror and Prime split, that it would have to be pre-TOS. And we're talking Strange New Worlds. So let's get her there so that there's some kind of tie-in with Strange New Worlds. Just sort of that timeline. And because we know in TOS, the mirror universe, like the split is a shorter distance away. So I'd like a tie-in to Strange New World, and then that would be a really good bouncing off point to have this alternate timeline. What about you, Kelvin?
Yeah, I love what you've just done there, Amy, because that would bring Ash Tyler back in as well, because he was the director of Section 31 at the point where Discovery Season 2 finishes, so a couple of years, so it fits nicely. It's a bit of a reset as well about Georgiou going with Discovery in the future. It would almost be like, well, what if she just stayed behind?
And we could get who's my favorite Klingon? I've got a picture with her in makeup.
Oh, L'Rell?
Yes, we get L'Rell too.
Yeah, I want L'Rell anyway. If we've got Klingons in Discovery this season, we want Chancellor L'Rell.
Do you think they would alter her makeup anymore to make her look even more like the current Strange New Worlds Klingons?
I think so, because she's, L'Rell as we see her as, warrior L'Rell. So,
but in season 2, they did soften it by putting the hair on, and so I don't think they'd need to do much to her. Right. Maybe a bit of pigmentation on the skin because she was very grey.
Yeah,
she looks a bit Borg-like. My desire for Section 31 is to include Bashir in some way. So I like the what could have been next after DS9 Section 31. So the kind of Picard Season 3 maybe area. We had a bit of Section 31 potential with this whole Changelings infiltration, Rolaran, the Underground. And we were all wanting Bashir to turn up. And I think having Siddig and Georgiou, Michelle Yeoh together would be, I'd just be a big fanboy for that. So that's where I wanted to appear, kind of the 25th century.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Right, shall we look at some trivia for the episode today? What have we got? Mark, why don't you start us off with this one, because it ties back to our episode the other week when we were talking about non-English episodes for Georgiou.
Oh, well, evidently this is one of 17 Star Trek episodes with titles derived from Latin.
Fabulous. And I'm hating on myself now because you've just said there are 17 of them. And at the time of recording the Georgiou episode, I was like, I can't think of any more. Fail. What else have we got? Amy?
Well, according to what's past as prologue, Mir, Paul Stamets, was initially a member of Lorca's coup, but ultimately betrayed him to Georgiou and was still alive and active aboard the ISS Charon 2 years later. This episode, however, depicts him as remaining loyal to Lorca and even making an attempt on Georgiou's life before being killed on the spot. Given Georgiou's apparent foreknowledge of the attempt, things may have played out similarly, albeit non-fatally for Stamets in the original timeline. Interesting to catch that flip.
Yeah, very. Kovich reveals that the Federation in the 32nd century is aware of the existence of an alternate reality, having at some point encountered a time soldier from that universe in 2379. This is also the first Star Trek production set in the Prime timeline to make a direct reference to the Kelvin timeline, and to first depict the elements from that timeline's 24th century, which was Starfleet officer Lieutenant Commander Yorn. He's shown wearing a 2350s, early 2360s Starfleet uniform, even though he's said to be stated from 2379, which, as we know, we probably had about 2 or 3 variants by then. So, yeah, my ears were burning when I first watched this episode, saying that is not a 2379 uniform nor comm badge. My headcanon is that thousands of years later, maybe the records were off a little bit.
Well, Carl's newspaper is an edition of the Star Dispatch, which was first seen in the original series episode The City on the Edge of Forever. It contains references to the Takan supernova from The Next Generation's The Last Outpost, the disappearance of the USS Jenolan from my fave, The Next Generation's Relics, the 21st Street Mission, again from the original series City on the Edge of Forever, Worf winning a Batleth competition in TNG's Parallels, love that, and the quotes, "Let me help," from TOS, the City on the Edge of Forever, and Good Soup, and Enterprise episode Strange New World, as well as scripts in Vulcan and Bajoran. The newspaper is also dated 3188, which happens to be the year that Burnham arrived in the 32nd century in the episode The Hope That Is You, Part 1.
Wow, I did not know that last fact. Well, I didn't know any of that, but that last one impressed me.
There is a lot in there. There's
so many Easter eggs.
Much. Yeah. Special shout out to the Takan Empire from The Last Outpost, to anybody who's playing Star Trek Resurgence. I realize as I've said that, I may have landed a spoiler for anyone playing, but it's really early on in the game. Christos has probably already said it on his show, so it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, very random callback to an early TNG episode. Great. Carl reveals himself to be the Guardian of Forever, first seen in the original series City on the Edge of Forever. And this is the only other episode in which his newspaper, the Star Dispatch, appears. Did anybody get that kind of, the theorizing you do between episodes week on week? Did anybody hear that he could be the Guardian of Forever because of the Star Dispatch as a clue?
Oh, yeah. That was well known back then.
It was a giveaway, wasn't it?
Yeah. So Risa is depicted as having a ring system in this episode, unlike in prior depictions. This may be a feature unique to the mirror universe. Maybe some different astrological features.
Emperor Philippa Georgiou quotes Victor Hugo in her monologue, "Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise." This quote is from the novel Les Miserables.
Oh, and what a fabulous French accent, Mark.
Oui.
I've thrown another little bit of trivia on the end there. I obsess over the length of a cold open. Call me a size queen, whatever. This part one of this episode had a really long cold open, and I timed it. It was 11 minutes before we got to the Discovery theme tune.
Wow.
Which is long.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some research and found that the longest cold open in Star Trek was 14 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I've not written down here the episode title. Does anybody want to guess? Think of an episode that has a long...
Can we play yes or no for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it a Discovery episode?
No.
Oh, well, then I'm out.
Is it a Picard episode?
No.
Is it a Star Trek episode?
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
Discovery did have most of the longer ones.
Right.
They're famous for it. It is a surprise. I will say that. You might not realize it.
Now give us the series and we'll go from there.
Okay. This will limit the number of episodes so you get it quicker. It's a Strange New Worlds episode.
Okay, come on, Mark. Is it New Eden?
No.
Okay.
Because
that's a Discovery episode.
Oh, I know. That's season. Yeah, but it's still Pike. I'm there. Oh, Mark.
My head is going to the episode that we covered on this show where the kid, the first servant episode, whatever one that is. No, am I wrong?
No,
I'm wrong.
No. All right. I'll have to give it to you.
Yep.
It's Spock Amok.
What?
That is a 14-minute cold open. My favorite episode of season 1.
Mine too. If you would have said that, I would have gotten it.
Okay, I'll make it easier for you for the next one. So if that's the longest, what do we think the shortest is? It came in at 18 seconds. And there is a particular series that was famous for having very quick cold opens on purpose. So does anyone know what the series is first?
The animated series?
No.
TNG.
No.
Oh, man.
It's been a long road.
Enterprise.
Okay.
It's Enterprise. But we won't go through all the episodes. I'll give it to you. It's actually Impulse, which is a season 3 Delphic Expanse episode. And it's the one where T'Pol's on the Vulcan ship and she goes all zombie. So the cold open is literally just T'Pol screaming like a banshee. And then you go to the theme tune wondering what's going on with T'Pol. So
that's in that trilogy one. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I just get fascinated by a cold open. And this episode had a very, very long one. So speaking of very long one, this episode is going. So Amy, why don't you tell us where we're going next week?
Well, we are going to go back to our Shuttlecraft series, part 5, and we are going to cover finally a TNG episode, Timescape. This one's fun. Listeners, you will know the famous meme of Picard putting a smiley face in the coolant link. That is the episode we will be covering. So go ahead and watch that in preparation for next week. That is your homework.
One of my top 10 favorite TNG episodes. I can't wait for this.
This could fit in either shuttlecraft or time travel, kind of. It works with both.
It is, because time has slowed down. I think it is really, it fits in both categories.
Let's now have a word from the network.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG. Hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Trexperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show. Hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev? A Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark. And Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @AllGoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at the Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching the master feed. So, Amy, where can people find you when your hand is not phasing and you're getting frustrated because you can't pick up your red wine?
Oh man, I felt for Georgiou as she was reaching for it. I was like, oh my gosh, what would that be like to not grab your wine? Oh, okay, glad I am not doing that. So you can find me gladly picking up my glass of wine here on the network, where I'm co-hosting Galaxy Class and Union Federation. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place in the BQN Collective, our listeners' Facebook group. And Mark, where can people find you when you're not making timeline changing decisions?
Well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter at MarkWhite207. You can find me on my other podcasts, Cinema Z. And also, if you become a patron of the network on Patreon, I host a show. It's Green. So, Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not in the mirror universe stabbing your fellow bridge officers to ascend to a promotion?
When I'm not doing that, which I would never do, hate violence. You can find me in the BQN Facebook group, the BQN Collective, can't speak, or you can head over to Instagram and or Twitter and search for me at Kelvin's Timeline, Well, I would love to have a chat with you.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to moi, thank you, me, for our artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron on the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussions on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us as we search out
all good things.
Did you have something you wanted to say then, Mark?
Well, all of a sudden, like it's like the I don't know, the AC or the heating unit in my building turned on, and it's right above my recording booth, and my walls started shaking, and it was really loud, and I was like, what? No, this better turn off quickly because I'm about to start recording again.
Maybe it was the dramatic music that shook it.
Literally, the walls were shaking. I was like,
wow.
Well, I
it
think
surprised me.
It covered it perfectly, so you could have got away with that. Let's see if Amy keeps that in or edits it out.